The signal arrives first as a rhythm in numbers, the patient metronome of sky surveys clicking across the night, until a fringe of brightness guillotines through the noise and the algorithms, suddenly awake, whisper a provisional designation that tastes of distance, 3I Atlas, a needle of cold arithmetic threading the sun. The path on the whiteboard is a clean incision, a hyperbola that does not bind but skims, a curve born under other constellations. And even before anyone says the word interstellar, there is the sensation of stepping into a room where the furniture is familiar, but every object is slightly displaced, as though the laws are the same, yet the accent is different. Velocity carries its own authority, so does eccentricity. A comet can pretend, a rock can masquerade, but the energy of arrival is a signature inked by foreign suns. In mission control, screens flicker with residuals that would seem trivial to a public hungry for spectacle, but which to dynamicalists feel like a nervous tremor beneath the floorboards. The mystery is not that the object is fast or that its orbit is open. It is that the data behave as if the object does not want to be entirely seen, as if light itself were negotiating a truce between revelation and privacy. They will say, it is just another visitor, the third by our ledger, discovered not with a shout, but a blink, Atlas catching a soft, oblique bruise across its sensor and tagging it before it slides on, a swimmer's shoulder breaking a silent lake. Telescopes swivel in choreography. Pan-stars, ZTF, a chorus of amateurs who still love the human drama of first sight. You can feel the machinery of the 21st century sky bringing its full attention to bear. Gigapixels pipelines, the unblinking patience of survey cadence. Designation rituals click into place, pasting a proper noun onto an ancient trajectory. But what lives behind the name is stranger than the name itself. The thing is dim, as expected. Its absolute magnitude suggests an object perhaps a few tens or hundreds of meters across, if it is dark, smaller if it is bright. Its color index leans toward the cool, a surface that drinks sunlight with a hint of iron, a hint of carbon. Spectra are stingy but not silent. Weak absorptions trace out the common alphabet of primitive material, the same primordial phrasings we hear in comet comas and centaur skins. Still, the motion is the headline, always the motion, skyplane shifts that agree beautifully with a hyperbolic conic, except where they don't, in bits so small they feel like a throat clearing in an empty theater. The numbers that matter here wear Greek letters and small errors. In a barycentric frame, the best fit orbit lands with an eccentricity comfortably above 1. A V of a few tens of kilometers per second, an inclination that refuses to bow to the ecliptic's etiquette. Photometry tells its own novella. The light curve suggests elongation, perhaps a ratio that turns the object into a sliver that tumbles, a slow roll punctuated by glints as it shows us a more reflective facet. We map the spin through flicker, infer shape through shadow. Pretend hands can feel the grain through a telescope. Occasional bursts in brightness scrawl question marks in the margins. Outgassing, grain release, the micro snowfall of sublimated ices turning to gas and pushing back at Newton with molecules as arguments. The equations for non-gravitational accelerations are old friends, the A1, A2, A3 parameters that we staple onto a comet's motion when sunlight becomes a thruster. But the way the fit improves when we allow a lateral component, the way the residuals relax as if a knot untied, leaves a taste of something a little too tidy. It is not that the data say sail or foil or engine. They only say allow for an extra breath in this direction and we exhale together. Anomalies are just unfamiliarities that survive their autopsies and most do not. Thruster-like whispers often collapse under more data into ice. Yet the nudges here are strangely well behaved, as if choreographed. The acceleration scales neatly with the inverse square of the sun's light, and while comets do this too, comets are messy in their obedience. Their vents do not read textbooks. Their spin torques evolve in fits. But 3I Atlas seems to take its lesson straight. Steady drift, consistent phasing, a perseverance that rewards every additional night of observation with the same quiet defiance of purely gravitational fate. You can call this an artifact of our hunger to find intention where only physics resides. We are primates who hear voices in wind and agency in tides. Or you can step more carefully across the floorboards and admit that if you wish to cross a planetary system unnoticed, you would adopt precisely this camouflage, a faint small thing with the spectral hum of a dirty snowball, a surface that plausibly sheds a whisper of gas, and a response to starlight that never rises above the plausible alibi of natural outgassing. Theories grow the way crystals do, from a seed in cold brine, a natra. Relic is the sober seed, a shard from the deep freeze between stars shed by planetesimal collisions in someone else's nursery. It is old news, but old news can still be good journalism. The extraordinary seed is a messenger, not in letters, but in craft. A light sail or shell, mass low, area high, designed to sip star photons and trade them for speed. Then there is the philosopher's seed, new physics, a leak in our grammar of motion, an unaccounted-for subtlety in how radiation ablates a surface, a second-order correction in thermal lag that, scaled to interstellar speeds and skimming trajectories, becomes loud enough to hear. Each seed grows dendrites in the mind, branching into scenarios. If it is a relic, then its tensile strength, its rotation, its lack of a thick coma, are all footnotes in a natural catalog that is broader than we imagined. If it is a sail, then someone engineered with restraint, choosing plausibility over bravado, writing in lowercase rather than capitals. If it is new physics, then the adjustment will be small, elegant, and maddening, a pen stroke in an equation that has held for centuries, now amending the margin with a nearly invisible yet globally binding change. Some say the timing itself has a taste of choreography. Survey reach expands, sensor noise declines, the cadence of night after night coverage sharpens, and precisely then the sky offers us a third outsider, neither as dramatic as the first nor as obviously cometary as the second. The geometry of Earth's orbit hands us favorable elongations just when we have the telescopic appetite to exploit them. And Jupiter, that slow behemoth, drifts into a configuration whose long arm can both tempt and deflect an incoming stone. In the spreadsheets of coincidence, the rows illuminate, a minor meteor shower that briefly thickens the upper atmosphere during a key pass, a satellite constellation tilt that inadvertently blocks the wrong fields at the right hours, an airglow event that tints the noise just enough to hide an important flare. None of these imply intent. Together, they drive the conspiracy curious to tighten their collars and the sober to exhale and say, coincidental structure is still structure. The universe has no obligation to act uncorrelated. Yet for those in the rooms where the unsmoothed data live, the nights are long. We have discovered again that the boundary between an orchestrated tale and a system with many moving parts is thin, especially when the listener longs to be surprised. Gravity, however, remains the strict schoolmaster who refuses to indulge romance. The sun owns the center. Everything else negotiates. In the equations of motion, the central term dominates but never rules alone. Jupiter's multipole moments etch subtle biases into the current. Saturn whispers. The Earth, in its turn, raises a tiny wave in the fabric that kisses the object's path like a passing glance. Trajectory analysts speak in conics but think in sums. A hyperbola is a sketch. The reality is a braided rope of perturbations. Solar oblateness, photon pressure, the gentle, constant push of outflowing solar wind. Relativistic precession, so. Well, modest it blushes. We plot the approach in the barycentric frame and watch the inbound asymptote thread toward its outbound cousin, the angle between them a sacrament of mass and distance. The object's periastron is a ritual we have attended before, yet never with the same guest. It skims, it bows, it refuses to be captured. And in the margins of these calculations, small course changes appear, not in the sky, but in our models. Tiny, permissible nudges that convert a slightly uncomfortable fit into a perfectly coiffed one. The phrase quiet course corrections does not accuse a hidden hand. It names what scientists do every day as data accrue. We correct courses, our courses, toward truth, softly, repeatedly, until the map stops shaking. Darkness in astronomy is not a metaphor. It is a working condition. There are gaps when the object crosses daylight, when it hides under the sun's glare, when storms sit on mountaintops and coat domes with a rind of wind. There are also gaps born of policy and prudence. Radar time is precious. Spacecraft slews are expensive in momentum. Satellite operators have obligations to safety that trump curiosity. So there is a blackout period, call it practical, when the best we can do is predict, integrate, and wait. In those days, the rumor economy blossoms, that someone pointed a classified sensor and saw a flash, that a deep space bedded instrument registered a thermal whisper tighter than any coma should allow, that a ground-based high-speed photometry run caught an occultation so crisp it looked engineered. The official channels say little, the unofficial say too much. In truth, the most common cause for silence is nothing to say, and the second most common is the care not to say it wrong. But humans are what we are. When the sky withholds, we invent. Still, even within the blackout, teams not bound by any agency flag and refit and publish, unfairly maligned as conspirators in a narrative that confuses caution with concealment and error bars with edicts. If Three-Eye Atlas is a lesson, it is one about humility yoked to ambition. Suppose the non-gravitational term is mundane, a suite of vents under a fragile crust activated by sunlight. Their recoil orderly because the spin state happens to be a stable, slow tumbler. That would still teach us how interstellar surfaces age, how their crusts anneal, how cosmic ray gardening hardens and patches them into quilts of varying porosity. If instead the acceleration is the signature of an ultralight matrix, a macroporous lattice with a radiation pressure cross-section atypically high for a natural shard, then our materials labs have work to do to reproduce such foams, such aerogels of space. And if we lift our lids and permit a sliver of engineered intention into the consideration, we open a new aisle in our search strategy. Not the noisy, beacon-bright hunt for transmissions, but the quiet archaeology of motion, the study of trajectories for traces of design. We would learn to read the margins of orbits the way historians read palimpsests, looking for the pressure of erased letters, for glints of narrative under the surface grammar of gravity. It would be less dramatic than a signal and vastly more difficult. It would also, in a way, be kinder to the cosmos to assume subtlety rather than spectacle. The practical implications are not shy. If small, steady pressure from starlight can carry a thin craft across a system, we can build them. We are already tentatively learning the engineering of photon sails, constructing sheets that do not tear under jitter, that do not wrinkle into thermal failure under harsh sun. A mission conceived in the 2030s could, with enough courage, chase an interstellar transient not with a flyby that blurs into insignificance, but with a shepherd that matches its energy, sidles alongside it, and listens. The logistics are brutal, short launch windows, high DV, and intercept in a geometry not of our choosing. But our civilization can dream faster than it hesitates. One change in doctrine, pre-approved launch opportunities married to survey triggers, rapid integration platforms waiting like coiled springs, and a new class of pursuit becomes routine. We could build instruments attuned to negative space, photometric systems designed to catch not just the light an object gives, but the light it refuses to give, to measure phase functions so precisely that tumbling reflections read as topography. In the best case scenario, if something out there is designed, we will recognize ourselves in its restraint. No message, only motion, no arrogance, only craft. And so we return to the phrase that makes headlines and enemies, hidden truth. What is hidden in this story is not a plot, but a practice. NASA is not a monolith of secrecy. It is a family of missions yoked to budgets, schedules, and the soft tyranny of the public's attention span. When the data wobble, the responsible thing is not to stream consciousness into a camera, but to tighten the models, re-reduce the frames, ask for more time on telescopes whose cues are already hungry. Quiet course corrections do not mean clandestine maneuvers in the sky. They mean colleagues in a Slack channel debating whether to include A2 in the fit, whether to switch from a Marsden to a rotating jet model, whether to weight the early photometry less energetically because the seeing was poor. The shadow cast over 3i Atlas is not the shadow of a cover-up, but the honest penumbra around a faint object whose signal bleeds into 1,000 practical constraints. This is not a scandal. It is the slow, exquisite labor of truth-telling under constraint. If that truth, when it hardens, resembles something radical, we will not have failed by being careful. We will have succeeded by refusing to be theatrical. What then do we do with the sensation, the nearly bodily feeling, that intention is written in the path? We treat it as a hypothesis among hypotheses, neither privileged nor scorned. We write it down. We ask what predictions it makes that outgassing cannot. We design a statue of experiments in our minds. A passive mass exposed to radiation pressure should respond with a specific cadence as it tumbles. A thin sail would ring differently. An engineered object might show edges in its occultation profile too sharp for a rubble pile, its therma. A lag would betray a purpose-made substrate. It would shimmer in polarization like a brushed metal or vanish like vantablack. And our task is to build the instruments that can tell the difference from 100 million kilometers away while time is short and the object refuses domestication. That means dedicating eyes to the awkward gaps between survey cadences, teaching our scheduling software to value curiosity as much as efficiency, accepting that sometimes the telescope will sit on an empty field because the chance of catching a glint is worth the night. It means reconfiguring space-based sensors to glance aside from their official targets and gift us with a sliver of context in the blackout. In the end, we will canonize the encounter in the same way we have learned to canonize all encounters, as a waypoint in a larger arc that moves from astonishment to protocol. First, there was the initial outsider, a cigar or a shard depending on its mood, that taught us humility by refusing our strongest categories. Then there was the second so comfortably cometary that some sighed in relief, as if reassurance were owed to us by the void. Now a third, neither loud nor silent, suggests that the catalog of possibilities had only opened a few pages. Each teaches different lessons, and together they insist on stamina. We must harden our sensors against the sky's tricks and soften our minds to its surprises. Some of us will prefer the story in which all strangeness collapses into ice. Others will prefer the one in which our neighborhood is crossed by crafts with old purposes. Both camps can be honest and both can be wrong. The virtue lies not in the story chosen, but in the discipline with which we test it and the grace with which we abandon it when the universe votes against it. So the future of this business of watching and listening to rocks and sails and questions will be written in design reviews and flight dynamics, yes, but also in the moral courage to sit with ambiguity longer than is comfortable. We will build constellations of small pursuers that awaken on command, powered not by chemical stutter, but by sunlight's patience, thin as dragonfly wings and twice as precise. We will keep a corner of our budgets open for rapid launch, the way hospitals keep a theater prepared for emergencies that are rare but humanly decisive. We will teach our students to love residuals more than results, to prefer a problem that feasts on their skills over an answer that flatters their egos. We will, if we are fortunate, one day tail a traveler for months rather than hours, and we will watch the tiny pressure of photons write its signature across it like a musician ornamenting a line. And when we report this to the public, we will use language that is careful without being cold, that admits wonder without feeding fear, that names the work as both scientific and human. The night is full of arrivals that do not announce themselves. A speck appears in a river of data. A team rubs its eyes. The sky's ledger grows a new line that will occupy the next season of someone's life. The headline will always be the same because the cosmos aiva is old and our part in it is young. Something from far away is passing by, and it behaves almost like the things we know until it doesn't. If there is any hidden truth here, it is that we are not yet fluent in the dialect of motion spoken by the interstellar. We are learning to parse it. We are learning to respect its idioms. Whether Three-Eye Atlas is relic or craft or correction to our physics, its visit is a page in a grammar book we are writing with the very alphabet it taught us. It is a humility that does not diminish our ambition. It is an ambition that does not sneer at humility. And as its outbound arc lifts from the sun's influence into the spare songs beyond, the echo it leaves in our machines and minds is a chord we will harmonize with technologies not yet prototyped and questions not yet audacious enough to ask. We follow because following is how a species becomes native to the sky. We listen because listening is how we learn to write the next sentence in the language of stars.